On one of the most demanding days in his role as CEO, Elon Musk was juggling a flurry of virtual meetings when his assistant inadvertently sent him the wrong Zoom link. Instead of joining a scheduled board meeting to discuss financial projections with executives, Elon found himself face-to-face with a group of elderly strangers who appeared just as surprised by his presence as he was by theirs. Before he could exit, a woman with silver hair greeted him warmly, saying, "Welcome to our Tuesday Grief Support Circle." What unfolded next profoundly reshaped Elon's perspective on success, relationships, and what truly matters in life. The wisdom shared by these senior individuals inspired him to launch one of his most meaningful initiatives, a project the world would never hear about. Before we dive into the video, let us know in the comments, which state are you watching from? That day was exceptionally hectic for Elon Musk. As the CEO of multiple companies, his schedule was always packed with meetings, calls, and urgent decisions that couldn't be delayed. This Tuesday was no different. He woke up at 5 a.m., reviewing reports from his Tesla factory in China, making decisions about an upcoming SpaceX rocket launch set for the following week, and addressing questions from his Neuralink research team regarding their latest breakthrough. By midday, Elon was navigating a series of virtual meetings from his office in Austin, Texas. His desk was cluttered with half-empty coffee cups, scribbled notes on scraps of paper, and 3 different phones that seemed to buzz incessantly with notifications. Beyond the large windows behind his desk, a beautiful spring day unfolded, but Elon barely had a moment to notice the clear blue sky or the trees swaying gently in the breeze. 2 minutes before the board meeting was set to begin, his assistant Jessica reminded him via intercom, "I've sent the Zoom link to your email." "Thanks," Elon replied, swiftly closing the documents he'd been reviewing and opening his inbox. Spotting Jessica's email with the Zoom link, he clicked it, expecting to see the familiar faces of his board members. Instead, as the video call connected, Elon was met with a grid of unfamiliar faces, mostly elderly men and women, who looked as startled to see him as he was to see them. There were about 8 participants, all appearing to be in their 70s and 80s, their expressions ranging from surprise to curiosity. Before Elon could speak or leave the call, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes spoke up. "Well, it looks like we have a new member today," she said with a gentle smile. "Welcome to our Tuesday Grief Support Group. I'm Margaret, the group coordinator." Elon had already reached for the "Leave Meeting" button, but something in Margaret's warm tone made him pause. He quickly realized that Jessica must have sent him the wrong Zoom link, a mistake that could easily happen given the dozens of virtual meetings scheduled daily. His initial instinct was to apologize for the intrusion and exit immediately, but he noticed the elderly participants looking at him with genuine interest. "I'm sorry," Elon began, "I think there's been a mix-up. I was supposed to join a different meeting." Margaret nodded understandingly. "That's all right. Technology can be tricky sometimes. You're welcome to leave if you need to, but you can also stay if you'd like. We've just started our session." Elon glanced at his watch. The board meeting was crucial. They were set to discuss financial forecasts and strategic plans for the next quarter. But he knew the board would wait for him, they always did. On the other hand, these elderly individuals might feel dismissed if he abruptly left their gathering. Deciding he could stay for a few minutes out of courtesy before excusing himself politely, he said, "I can stay for a little while," adjusting his camera to center his face in the frame. He didn't introduce himself, and fortunately, none of the elderly participants seemed to recognize him. Outside the usual context of tech announcements or business settings, he was just another face on their screen. "Wonderful," Margaret responded. She explained, "As I was saying, this is our weekly support group for seniors who have lost their spouses. We come together to share our experiences, support each other, and help one another navigate the journey of grief and healing." She glanced at the familiar faces on the screen. "Let's start, as we always do, by sharing memories of our loved ones that brought us joy this week. Frank, would you like to begin?" Frank, a man with thick gray hair and glasses, looked to be in his 80s, his deep wrinkles around his eyes telling stories of both laughter and sorrow. "Thank you, Margaret," he said in a slightly raspy but steady voice. I'm Frank, and 14 months ago, I lost my wife Elaine after 57 years of marriage. Elon felt a quiet jolt at those words. 57 years together, it was almost unimaginable to him, such a long partnership and such a profound loss. Frank continued, "This week, I finally managed to make Elaine's famous apple pie. She was known for it in our community, people always asked her to bring it to church potlucks and family gatherings. After she passed, I realized I'd never learned to make it myself, and the thought of never tasting that pie again was unbearable." He paused, a small smile crossing his face. "So, I dug out her recipe, stained and worn from years of use, and gave it a try. The first pie was a disaster, the crust was like cardboard from too much cinnamon." He chuckled, and the others smiled knowingly. "But I kept at it, and yesterday, I think I finally got it right. I brought it to our church dinner, and people said it tasted just like Elaine's. One of our old friends even cried when she tried it." Frank's voice softened. "It felt like Elaine was there with us, you know. Like I was keeping a piece of her alive by sharing what she loved to do for others." Elon found himself unexpectedly moved by Frank's story. He had intended to listen politely for a minute and then leave, but now he was genuinely captivated by what these people had to share. He glanced at his phone, buzzing with messages asking where he was, but silenced it and turned his attention back to the screen. Margaret thanked Frank and turned to a woman with short, curly gray hair and striking blue eyes. "Dorothy, would you like to go next?" Dorothy nodded, adjusting her glasses. "I'm Dorothy, and almost 2 years ago, I lost my husband Richard. We were married for 49 years. She gave a faint smile. "This week, I started volunteering at a local animal shelter. Richard loved animals so much. Throughout our marriage, we always had at least 2 dogs. After he passed, I couldn't bring myself to get another pet, but I missed that connection with animals." She smiled as she spoke. The shelter needed people to just sit with the dogs, especially the older ones who are harder to adopt. Some of them are so scared or sad, they just need someone to be gentle with them, to show they're not forgotten. I go there 3 times a week, and it's been so comforting. Richard would love knowing I'm doing this. It feels like a way to honor his compassionate spirit." As the session continued, Elon completely forgot about the board meeting. One by one, the group members shared their stories, not only of loss but also of how they were rebuilding their lives, honoring their late spouses, and discovering new facets of themselves. A man named Harold shared how, at 78, he learned to cook for the first time after losing his wife of 52 years. "Martha did all the cooking in our house. I could barely boil water for tea," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "But my granddaughter has been giving me cooking lessons over video calls every Sunday. Last week, I made lasagna from scratch." Martha would have been shocked, and probably a bit amused. A woman named Beatrice described how she took up painting, something she'd always wanted to try but never found time for during her busy years of raising children and supporting her husband's career. "William always said I had an artist's eye," she said softly. "I wish he could see what I'm creating now, but when I paint, it feels like he's looking over my shoulder, cheering me on." As each person spoke, Elon noticed something remarkable. Despite their deep losses, these individuals weren't defined by their grief. Yes, they acknowledged their pain and struggles, the loneliness of empty homes, the challenge of making decisions alone after decades of partnership, the small daily reminders of absence that could suddenly overwhelm them. But they also spoke of resilience, new beginnings, and finding meaning and even joy in their changed circumstances. They offered each other practical advice, resources for handling estate paperwork, tips for cooking single servings, ideas for staying connected with faraway relatives. They celebrated each other's small victories, a restful night's sleep after weeks of insomnia, the courage to donate a spouse's clothes to charity, the first solo outing to a social event. About 45 minutes into the session, Margaret gently shifted her attention to Elon, who had been listening quietly, occasionally nodding in response to particularly touching stories. "We have a new friend with us today," she said kindly. Would you like to share anything with the group? Of course, there's no pressure. Elon hesitated. He hadn't planned to participate, only to observe before leaving. But something about the group's sincere openness prompted him to respond honestly. Careful not to mention his name or position, not wanting to disrupt the group's authentic atmosphere with his celebrity status, he began, I'm not in quite the same situation as all of you, but I've experienced loss in my life and have wrestled with some of the same questions you've talked about, what really matters, how to meaningfully use the time we have. He paused, surprised by his own willingness to open up to these strangers. I have a very demanding job that often makes me feel disconnected from the people I care about most. Listening to your stories today has been really helpful. You've reminded me that success means nothing without meaningful relationships. The group nodded in understanding, unaware they were hearing the reflections of one of the world's wealthiest entrepreneurs. That's a common struggle, Harold commented. Before I retired, I was so focused on my career that I missed too many important moments with my kids. After Martha passed, my biggest regret wasn't about work achievements. It was about choosing work over family. It's never too late to shift your priorities, Beatrice added gently. That's one of the gifts grief gives us, though it comes at a high cost, clarity about what truly matters. For the remainder of the session, the group continued sharing insights, occasionally drawing Elon into the conversation with questions or comments that treated him as an equal participant, not an outsider or celebrity. Their authenticity and wisdom deeply impacted him. These weren't people seeking attention or recognition. They were simply individuals supporting each other through one of life's most universal and profound experiences. As the hour drew to a close, Margaret brought up a practical issue the group was facing. Before we wrap up today's meeting, I wanted to update everyone on our meeting situation, she said. As you know, the community center where we used to meet in person has been closed due to budget cuts. We'll continue meeting online for now, but I know that's not ideal for everyone. Some of our regular members can't join us because they lack reliable internet access or aren't comfortable with technology. Frank nodded sadly. I spoke with Irene yesterday. She's been a member of our group since it started 5 years ago, but she lives in that senior apartment complex with poor internet, and her arthritis makes using a computer difficult. She's feeling very isolated. I'm working on finding us a new space, Margaret reassured them. But with the current economic climate, many community organizations are struggling with funding. We might need to be patient. After the call ended, Elon sat at his desk for several minutes, lost in thought. His phone was flooded with missed calls and messages from concerned board members and executives, but he couldn't bring himself to respond right away. His mind was still with Frank, Dorothy, Harold, Beatrice, and the others who had shown him a kind of courage and community he rarely encountered in his business world. Their stories had touched something in him that had been dormant for too long. In his relentless pursuit of innovation and progress, he sometimes lost sight of the very human connections that gave that progress meaning. These elderly individuals taught him that true strength lies not in building companies or achieving fame, but in how we care for each other during life's most challenging moments. Finally, Elon picked up his phone and called Jessica. I'm so sorry about the Zoom link mix-up, she began immediately, sounding stressed. The board has been trying to reach you for an hour. They're still waiting. It's okay, Jessica, Elon interrupted gently. Actually, I'm glad it happened. I need your help with something important. Over the next few days, amid his usual business obligations, Elon worked with a small team to research community spaces in the area where Margaret's group was based. He learned it was a mid-sized town in Michigan, hit hard by a recession that had led to cuts in many social services and community programs. Through a series of discreet inquiries and carefully anonymous donations, Elon arranged the purchase and renovation of an empty storefront on the town's main street. The space was transformed into a cozy community center with multiple meeting rooms, a fully equipped kitchen for shared meals, a small library, and reliable high-speed internet access. The center was designed to be fully accessible for seniors with limited mobility, featuring comfortable seating, good lighting, and a layout that encouraged connection and conversation. Most significantly, Elon established a foundation to support not only this center but also similar grief support groups across the country. The foundation would provide grants for meeting spaces, facilitator training, and resources to help isolated seniors access support during their time of loss. He took great care to ensure his name wasn't linked to these initiatives, working through a series of trusts and charities to maintain his anonymity. A week after his accidental introduction to the grief support group, Elon clicked the Zoom link again at the appointed time. This time, it was a deliberate choice, not a mistake. He joined a few minutes early and was warmly greeted by Margaret. "It's so nice to see you again," she said, her voice filled with genuine delight. "I wasn't sure if you'd come back." "I wouldn't have missed it," Elon replied honestly. "I learned more in that hour with your group than I have in most of my high-stakes business meetings." Margaret smiled. "That's the beauty of spaces where people can be real. When we take off the masks we usually wear and speak honestly about our experiences, we can all learn something valuable from each other." As the other group members joined the call, they welcomed Elon like an old friend, asking about his week and expressing joy that he'd returned. They still had no idea who he really was, and he preferred it that way. Here, he wasn't defined by his wealth, companies, or public persona. He was simply a person seeking wisdom and connection, just like everyone else. During this session, Margaret had exciting news to share with the group. "I can hardly believe what's happened," she began, her face glowing with joy. "Yesterday, I got a call from a community foundation I'd never heard of before. They've purchased and renovated a building downtown to serve as a new community center, and they've offered our grief support group a permanent space there, completely free of charge." The elderly participants expressed amazement and delight. "But that's not all," Margaret continued. "The center has everything we could need: comfortable meeting rooms, a kitchen so we can share meals together, even tech stations where people can get help connecting with relatives online. And for those group members who can't drive themselves, they've arranged transportation." "It sounds too good to be true," Frank remarked, looking pleased but a bit skeptical. "What's the catch?" "I asked the same thing," Margaret admitted. "But they assured me there's no catch. The foundation was created specifically to support seniors dealing with grief and isolation. Apparently, the founder experienced a personal loss and wanted to ensure others had the support they needed. They're establishing similar centers in communities across the country." Elon kept a neutral expression, but inside, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had the resources to make a tangible difference in these people's lives, and doing so anonymously felt right. This wasn't about publicity or enhancing his image. It was about honoring the wisdom and courage he'd witnessed in this group. Over the weeks that followed, Elon made the Tuesday Grief Support Circle a priority in his schedule. Whenever possible, he arranged his meetings around that hour, finding that the perspective he gained from these sessions actually made him more effective in his business dealings. He became more patient with his teams, more attuned to the human element in his companies, and more thoughtful about the real-world impact of his technological innovations. The senior members of the group never learned the true identity of their mysterious Tuesday visitor. They knew him only as a thoughtful listener who occasionally shared reflections on balancing work and personal relationships, asked insightful questions about their experiences, and seemed genuinely invested in their daily triumphs and challenges. For his part, Elon came to cherish these relationships, which existed entirely outside his public identity. Frank taught him persistence through his weekly updates on the apple pie, continuing to refine his technique to honor his late wife's legacy. Dorothy shared stories about a shelter dog she was helping, showing Elon how to find healing through service to vulnerable beings. Harold's culinary adventures reminded him of the joy of learning new skills at any age, while Beatrice's paintings illustrated how creativity can flourish even amidst grief. 3 months after his first accidental appearance in the group, Margaret announced that their first in-person meeting at the new community center would take place the following week. The group members expressed excitement about gathering face-to-face after months of virtual meetings. "Will you be able to join us in person?" Frank asked Elon directly. It'd be great to shake hands after all these weeks of connecting through screens. Elon hesitated. He wanted to meet these people who had become so important to him, but he knew that in person, he'd likely be recognized, which would permanently alter the group's dynamic. "I'm not sure if I can make it," he said carefully. "I travel a lot for work, but I'll definitely try." After careful consideration, Elon decided to visit the community center the day before the group's first in-person meeting. He arranged his schedule to allow for a brief tour of the center, traveling with minimal security and dressed as inconspicuously as possible in jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a baseball cap. The center's director, hired through the foundation and unaware of Elon's connection to the project, showed him around. Elon felt immense satisfaction seeing his vision come to life. The space was warm and inviting, with comfortable furniture arranged to facilitate conversation, walls adorned with local artwork, and large windows letting in natural light. A group of seniors was already using the computer area, where young volunteers helped them learn to video chat with distant relatives. In the main meeting room where the grief support group was set to gather the next day, Elon noticed a simple plaque on the wall. It read, "Dedicated to those who teach us that the deepest losses can lead to the deepest connections. May all who gather here find solace, wisdom, and community." "That's a beautiful sentiment," Elon remarked to the director. She nodded. The foundation insisted on it. It must hold special meaning for the anonymous donor who funded this place. Before leaving, Elon arranged for the delivery of carefully chosen gifts for each group member during their first meeting. For Frank, a handcrafted pie dish named after his wife. For Dorothy, a certificate of a donation to the animal shelter in her late husband's name. For Harold, a collection of recipes from around the world with encouraging notes about his culinary journey. For Beatrice, a set of professional paints and colors inspired by the few paintings she'd shown on camera during sessions. And for Margaret, who had created and sustained this healing space for so many, a simple handwritten card that read, "Thank you for showing me what true leadership looks like. Some guide rockets into space or companies to success, but you guide broken hearts back to wholeness. That's the most important work of all." The gifts were signed simply, "Your Tuesday friend." Elon didn't attend the in-person meeting the next day. Instead, he joined the scheduled board meeting that had been on his calendar 3 months earlier, the day the wrong Zoom link had so profoundly shifted his perspective. As his executives discussed quarterly projections and market strategies, his thoughts were with the grief support group gathering in their new space. He imagined Frank sharing his latest baking success, Dorothy talking about a shy shelter dog who finally trusted her enough to take a treat from her hand, Harold describing his growing confidence in the kitchen, and Beatrice perhaps bringing one of her paintings to show the group in person. He pictured Margaret facilitating with her gentle wisdom, creating a space where vulnerability was welcomed, and pain could transform into connection. That accidental Zoom call had become one of the most significant mistakes of his life. While most knew Elon Musk as a tech innovator focused on the future, these elderly individuals helped him reconnect with timeless human truths, that our connections with others give life its deepest meaning, that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources, and that sometimes the most important meetings aren't the ones on our official calendars, but those where we witness the quiet heroism of ordinary people supporting each other through life's challenges with dignity, wisdom, and love. In the months and years that followed, Elon maintained an anonymous connection with the grief support group, joining their virtual sessions whenever his schedule allowed. The community center initiative expanded to dozens of locations across the country, creating spaces where thousands of seniors found support during their darkest moments. Few knew about this aspect of Elon Musk's life and work. It was never mentioned in press releases or news stories about his many innovations, but for Elon himself, it remained one of his most significant contributions, not because it was revolutionary or world-changing in the way his companies aimed to be, but because it recognized and honored the most fundamental human need to be seen, heard, and connected with others, especially during life's most difficult transitions. And it all began with a simple error, a wrong Zoom link that led him not to a boardroom filled with executives, but to a virtual gathering of wise elders who taught him that sometimes the most important innovations aren't technological advancements at all, but the enduring human capacity for empathy, resilience, and genuine connection. This concludes our narrative journey. I trust you found this gripping saga of intrigue, cutting-edge innovation, and astonishing discoveries captivating. From where are you tuning in today? I'm curious to learn which corner of the globe this tale has touched. If this escapade held your interest, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for a steady stream of compelling, mind-expanding stories just like this one. Fresh material is posted frequently, ensuring you're always in the loop for the newest spellbinding adventures. Be sure to pass this video along to your loved ones and friends. It's a great way to share positivity and insight while expanding our circle of story enthusiasts. Your encouragement is invaluable. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you back for the next tale.